I don't feel like Peter Parker putting this on. I feel like Peter B. Parker from Into the Spider-Verse. I need pizza. Here we are again. It is October. It is spoopy month. It is Halloween. And of course, like many of us, we find that as a reason, as an excuse, as a privilege, and as an escape to finally get rid of all of our issues and problems of our day-to-day life, escape, and be able to be our favorite character that we've always wanted to be, at least for a day, for some of us a week, for many others the whole month, and play our favorite superhero, heroine, make-believe character, villain, etc., you name it. And of course, for me, as you can tell, not only from my channel name, but from what I'm wearing before you, it is Spider-Man. I know I love Batman, and as much as I love Batman and even other characters like Doctor Strange, Spider-Man has always been my #1 top favorite hero, primarily because of the relatability. The fact that he is, without the powers, just an everyday kid from Queens with the similar problems that we all have from day-to-day life, except he was entrusted the great responsibility of being Spider-Man and the power that comes with it. And so that's always been something that's been a huge affinity for me. So nevertheless, growing up, I've always wanted a genuine Spider-Man costume. And 3 years ago to this day, I got myself the costume that I'm wearing right before you, which is the Zentai suit Spider-Man. Not to be confused with the suit that comes from Zentai Zone, but rather the Zentai Lycra. There was some alternate names that I found on Amazon, but primarily I ordered this from Amazon, and it's titled the Zentai suit. It retails for about $48, $49, depending on which seller you got from Amazon and who's shipping it. But this is ideally the suit that you're going to be getting. This is modeled after the Sam Raimi interpretation of Spider-Man, as you can see kind of from the texturing and the patterns and the overall look. And I got this costume about 3 years ago to go to a party, wear it, and have fun with it. And since then I've worn it on a couple of occasions, but from time to time I have alternated in the Halloween events since then. And now here I am to not only revisit the suit, but kind of give it a different perspective and look after wearing it a handful of times, see how it stood the test of time, and whether or not this is a good option for you if you're either on a budget, or if you should be at least saving your pennies a little bit more to then get something of a higher quality and kind of compare the things. I got this suit right after being on a little bit of a Spider-Man high, after finally finishing the Insomniac 2018 PS4 Spider-Man game. And so getting a costume was kind of like in my brain, hovering all over the place. And in the years since then, I then gained knowledge about different other places that make suits, like tailor-make suits for you that are based on different interpretations of Spider-Man, whether it be the PS4 Insomniac or the Sam Raimi or the Amazing Spider-Man or more comic accurate versions of the character. And different sites out there exist, like Zentai Zone and Print Costume and RPC Studio. But of course, those are studios and companies that are specifically made to literally, both figuratively and literally, tailor make suits for you in terms of actual size accuracy, making sure that the waist and the chest is all retrofitted to your liking, along with different customization options like being able to add zippers and being able to change up things. And that's ideally why you pay the extra money for those sites, is to be able to have the option and the luxury to be able to add those things to your liking, to your preference, being able to have zippers on the forms in case you just kind of want to slide this out, etc., etc. I wanted something that is definitely better than your average Party City, Walmart, Target costume, but at the same time, nothing that's really going to break the bank, and that's why I turned to Amazon to find a suit like this, and that's exactly where I found it. And there's going to be an affiliate link in the description below if you guys want to get your own costume, and if you guys do use that link, it does kind of help out the channel a little bit, so just a little bit of a disclaimer out there, because that link is going to be for the exact same costume that you see me wearing here. And 3 years later, I can honestly say it still fits the bill. Now granted, I haven't exactly grown in the sense of weight or body mass, so it still fits like a glove, but I have washed it a handful of times, and it's primarily spent its time in this bag that it came with. So it hasn't exactly been out in the open and hasn't actually, you know, absorbed dust or chemicals or odors or things like that. But nevertheless, I do make sure that I wash it from time to time to make sure it doesn't risk gathering those odors. And from what I can tell, it still feels very comfortable. It still has the lycra texture. It still hasn't eroded or, you know, faded out. It still looks, you know, vibrant enough from when I got it. Of course, you are gonna get much more proper detailing and pattern and quality material from those other sites, but for 50 bucks, this is still a very worthwhile option. It still feels comfortable. It still feels like something that you can ideally wear not just for costume parties and Halloween events, but even like cosplay for conventions and events and things like that of the nerd variety. I ordered a size small because I am 5 feet 7 inches, at least according to the subway door that I would always exit, and has a measuring tape alongside of the door would tell me that's pretty much what I'm using to go off of. And so being that and roughly between 115 and 120 pounds, I'm a very small guy. That's just exactly how I was made. And so far, again, it fits rather well, and I ordered the small size, and so far everything feels rather well tight and firm and does, you know, kind of accentuate the body while at the same time adding proper texturing and shading, especially along the oblique kind of side right here. There's not exactly true definite muscle definition that you may have seen in other costumes, so that's not exactly going to come across too well unless you have muscle of your own. But for the most part, it is a very tight but also very stretchy and comfortable fit. The only areas of contingency would probably be the fingers. You can see a little bit of some extra material kind of seeping over the sides of the fingers and the tip of the fingers. And then ideally the legs. The legs, even 3 years since, have still been a little bit of an issue where I highly recommend wearing some kind of Under Armour or legging kind of material underneath to fill in that extra space, because you are going to have a little, just a tiny little bit of extra fabric kind of loosening and hanging off the sides of the ankle area and back portion of the legs. And going back to the luxuries of those other companies that charge a little bit extra, and by a little bit I mean quite a bit, a lot. I mean, some of the higher priced costumes that you would get would be from sites like RPC Studios, which can charge up to about 700 bucks for a very screen accurate costume. And some of those costumes offer the added advantage of having a invisible U-shaped zipper that then kind of blends in with the costume, whereas with this one, it's a vertical, right down the middle, vertical slice zipper that could be a little bit difficult to get done without the assistance of a second party. In my case, I just happen to be skinny enough that I can get the zipper by myself, but with some added, you know, work and strenuous, you know, efforts on my shoulders, to the point where I just a tiny bit more and I probably would have dislocated my shoulder. So a little bit of a warning for those of you who might have some additional mass on you or additional muscle. You might need some extra assistance to be able to zip back up, because I do know that the U-shaped zippers on some other costumes might be a little bit more effective than the one of here. And also, if you couldn't already tell from not only the front symbol but also the back one, this is actually more so of the Spider-Man 1 movie costume as opposed to Spider-Man 2. So if you have a preference there, you're gonna want to either do some research or take a look at some of the images, or, you know, as you can see from the video before you can see that this is actually the symbol that came along with this costume. So if you're going for accuracy of one film versus the other, that's something to take of note. And though 3 years later and after many washes, the color and the actual look of the costume comes across very well and hasn't exactly faded, I did notice that as I inspected the costume from time to time after washing, I would notice that just a couple, as any fabric, especially over the years, would have a tendency to just have little dots. I'm talking almost damn near microscopic portions of the costume, primarily over around here, the torso area and the back area, where you can see a little, just a tiny little bit of perforation. But again, it's been 3 years, so much like with almost any other clothing, especially delicate materials such as lycra, and with not necessarily excessive washing, but washing of the routine variety, you're gonna notice little areas that are gonna start eroding away, especially if microscopic beings such as like little mites and things like that can get to that material. Then that's just something, again, to just take notice of. Make sure you keep it in the bag as opposed to just hanging in your coat or coat rack or in your closet, and that will definitely prolong the life of your Spider-Man costume. But you may have noticed that a little asset that completes the whole ensemble is missing, and unfortunately that is the mask. Now, in terms of actual material and durability, it's made out of primarily the same material that this costume is made out of, and because of that, it still has stood the test of time. My little nitpick about certain little parts here and there, if you look at it from a very up close and personal, you can see portions of the material kind of eroding away. But of course, it's been 3 years, and we're talking just a couple, like one or here, two or there, and they're barely even noticeable, especially when you put on the mask itself. My issue, however, is the lenses. Being that I just mentioned, if you're very nitpicky about comic accuracy or screen accuracy in this regard, being the Raimi costume, you would want it to be very accurate for what you're paying for. And this is the only major disclaimer that I need to point out, that 3 years since, I do wish that they would have changed the lenses on the mask that it came with, because as you can see, this is most definitely not the Raimi lenses that he had in the movie. The mask itself fits great, and it fleshes very well with the rest of the costume, and again, it's made out of that same material, so 3 years later still feels good. I've washed it a handful of times. Odors, get out of it right away, especially with proper washing. But the lenses themselves, not only are they not exactly screen accurate, but they have a tendency to ride up a little bit. I don't know if it's maybe because of the shape of my head or it's a little bit too big from the backside, but the lenses do have the tendency to either fog up, or especially in the in the COVID age that we're in right now, because you might be wearing an additional mask underneath to be able to protect yourself, you run the chance of fogging them up. But on top of that, they were riding just a little too high up, so I had to, whenever I would go to like parties or events, I would constantly have to pull the mask a little bit down to make sure that the under parts of the lenses aren't pressing up against my eyes. So that was an issue that I was facing over the course of time, that I was a little naive to at the beginning, but over time I've learned to accept and be like, okay, if you're gonna get this costume, know that ahead of time, and if you feel like that's gonna be a problem, I recommend going either into Amazon or, better yet, other third-party sites like Etsy, etc., to be able to find yourself not only a accurate Raimi mask, but also one that's just gonna feel overall much more comfortable. Even now I'm at the point where I've been scouring around the sites trying to see if I could find myself not only a much more accurate Raimi mask, but also a face shell. I haven't exactly gotten myself a face shell to be able to give it a much more accurate and much more realistic look, but also something that's a bit more comfortable, allows me to wear my glasses underneath. And I'm still doing the research, I'm still trying to find my way to be able to find the right fit, quite literally and figuratively. But it's definitely something that, even without owning, I still kind of recommend to doing your research, because face shells so far look like something that is highly recommended, and I'm looking into doing myself. As far as the rest of the costume that you see before you, I'm actually still very happy. So if you want to go for something that's a bit more budget friendly, especially in, like I said, the time that we live in with COVID, and money may be a little bit much more on the tighter side, it's really not a bad option for 50 bucks. For 50 bucks, if you're going for something a little bit more on the cheaper side, this is not a bad fit. And again, I guess the thing that you take away from here is that if something were to happen to the suit, it was only 50 bucks. You can probably afford to spend another 50 bucks, whereas opposed to if you spend a good 200 to 250 bucks on something that was custom and tailor fit made for you, and something happens to it, you're going to have to go through that whole process again, not only of spending the money, but also going through the processing and the shipping, sending out the right measurements, making sure they're getting the stitching correct, answering all your questions. So there is some caveats there that you're trading one for the other and making sure that you're getting your money's worth. So if you are looking for something that's a little cheaper but still effective and gets to you a lot quicker, then the Zentai Lycra suit that you see before you is not a bad option, and you'll be all set just in time for Halloween. So thank you guys so much for watching this update slash revisit of the Zentai Sam Raimi Spider-Man suit. I appreciate you. If you guys want to get your own suit like this, again, you can check out the affiliate link in the description below. It would really help out the channel if you do. Make sure to check out this other video that's showing up on the screen right here for some more Spider-Man goodness. And until next time, guys, stay humble. Peace out.